Welcome, CPS News Network. Canada, CPS building, big office, burns to the ground. This is Manitoba. This is a child trafficking epicenter. Thank you for watching. Stand by. We're going to be covering this whole case. Manitoba, child trafficking, CPS headquarters burns to the ground. This is an act of God. What else can you call it? Manitoba, Canada, CPS office burns to the ground. We're going to be covering Canada. Stand by, everyone. I got a lot of good information coming in. What this facility was doing, what they've been doing to Indians for decades. This has been going on a long time. Canada, torturing the Indians, trafficking Indians. You're not going to believe what you're going to hear. You're going to hear 90% Indians in CPS custody. It's 90% Aboriginal Indians, child trafficking. Canada, out of control. The main central office in Canada has burnt to the ground. We're very excited to know that this place is no longer in service. What else can you say? We're going to be covering Canada, Manitoba specifically, the war crimes they're committing. This is a child trafficking detention center. This is little miniature Guantanamo Bay for Indians. This is CFS, they call it in Canada. It's just an extension of Child Protective Service. We're going to get all into this. Please stand by. I got good videos coming up about Manitoba, about Canada. 90% of children in foster care are Indians. They're committing war crimes. They're killing babies. They're trafficking girls. They're killing girls in volume, in scale, like we've never seen before. This is atrocities happening in Canada. It's been going on for decades, and we're going to cover it here today. I need you to stick with me and watch my videos. I need you to share this content. Yeah, the Indians, they just exploit them, Kim. They've been exploiting them for decades. Very excited about the end of this Guantanamo Bay for children. Indians, they love the Indians. They exploit the Indians. You're going to find out why. I got the information. I got the videos coming in. You're going to be able to watch those. They're coming real quick. I need you to share this stuff. It's very important that you share this information. These headquarters all need to be shut down one way or another. This is, they're committing war crimes. They're torturing children. They're sending them to pedophiles. They're being murdered. They're being raped. They're being drugged. As the central headquarters in Manitoba has burnt down. We're going to cover it. Stand by. Stand by. This building is no more. No more child trafficking, Manitoba. Indians, they've been preying on Indians. 90% of Indians in foster care are from Indian tribes. They've been doing this for decades. Stand by. We're going to go straight to a lot of good information regarding what was going on over there. Stand by. It's coming in here. Let's just shut this down. Okay, let's go straight to some videos. We've got a lot of videos ready to play here. This is what's happening in Manitoba. You're going to hear it right here.
And you brought up a really important point that we at WAM have been fighting against for several years. We know
Please
that
share this
CFS
content.
has become a huge issue.
Please share it.
Of children in care of First Nations, there's profit to be made off of the system. We have to remember that only 11.1% of the entire population of Manitoba is First Nations, yet 90% of the children in care are First Nations, and that is obviously
90%.
a huge issue. That's not
You heard
a
him.
coincidence. There's a reason for that. Now, what would you
Find out
do
why.
if elected at the legislative building? What would you do in order to call the powers of CFS and this kind of profit-making system that's bordered around the whole CFS system?
I would be calling out CFS in the ledge, and bringing to light the problems with giving so much money per child. I mean, when you look at it, one of the First Nations people I was talking with, they said, well, you know, Child and Family Services receives $68,000 per child.
Okay, you heard him. $68,000 per child, $70,000, and he's claiming that they're giving $2,000 to traffic a child, an Indian. 90% of them are Indians in Manitoba, in Canada. We're covering it. We're also covering the burning down of the building. Their central headquarters is no more. Child trafficking detention, a war facility has been burnt down to the ground.
So their budget depends on having a lot of children in care. So what they're doing is they're stealing children for money, basically, and coming up with all sorts of excuses for taking these children from these homes. And then they keep these children away from their culture, away from their families, and it just becomes a vicious cycle for them. And with them, you know, basically stealing the children and making money off these children, they send them out to homes. Some of these people, yes, they're good caring foster parents, but other ones, they see that as a money-making area for them because they receive $2,000 some odd $100 per child. So if they have 4 children, they're receiving $8,000 a month to take care of these children, and the children may receive $150 out of that for personal use, but the rest is given to the families that are fostering them.
And it's so sad to look at this system. I want to give out a few stats here because there are 11,000 children in care, and that's a conservative estimate that came out a few years ago. Out of that, about 60% of children that become adults through the CFS system end up homeless. That's a huge statistic. About 75 to 80% of those missing and murdered came through the CFS system. If we want to talk about what some of the root causes are for many of the problems we see, it doesn't end at CFS, but it's largely within the CFS system and what it does to children and how it destroys development. It's so sad to watch because I know we're a laughingstock for a lot of people outside of Manitoba, and it's a $500 million a year industry in Manitoba, and that should be shameful. That's totally shameful, and people should really be looking at those facts and doing something. You don't have to be personally affected by CFS.
Okay, 11,000 kids, $500 million industry. Let's repeat that.
People should really be looking at those facts and doing something. You don't have to be personally affected by CFS, but you should really stand up and say something about this because we can't just allow our children to be taken and put into the government system like they are government property. It's just so wrong.
You heard it there. Great interview there. Again, we're covering the burning down of the child trafficking facility in Manitoba. Here it is here. It is an inferno. It has burnt to the ground. It cannot operate anymore. All of these facilities need to be shut down. They're committing war crimes against children. Manitoba, Canada, heinous forms of abuse against Indians for decades. They're still doing it. You heard them, 11,000 kids. 90% are Aboriginal Indians. They're preying on the Indians. 11,000 children getting $70,000 a month per child. Do the math. Massive child trafficking torture facility burns to the ground. Oh my God. All of these facilities need to be shut down. Every single CPS facility in the United States, Canada, Australia, the new UK needs to be shut down. It's that simple. So, you know, we don't have any sorrow here. We're glad that this torture facility, child trafficking compound in Manitoba, Canada, can no longer traffic children. You know, look at the Christmas tree right here. There's a Christmas tree. You know, is this an act of God? Has God spoken? They hurt so many children. They kill so many children. These are Indian children, young girls, young boys, never to be seen again. You're going to hear it here. We got some video. We got some good content coming up. Stand by. Make sure you share this content. We're really covering some important topics. It's so important that you share what it is we post here. Now we're going to go to some more videos. We've got some good videos of victims. This is a foster girl in a hotel beat to death.
We begin tonight with one of those stories that makes you wonder how it could ever happen in this country. A teenage girl, supposedly under government care, was found in a Winnipeg parking lot, beaten and in critical condition. She was being housed in a hotel, a so-called last resort for kids in the system who fall through the cracks. Tina Fontaine was one of those kids too. She was found murdered and thrown in the Red River last summer. Cameron McIntosh has more for us tonight from Winnipeg. Cameron.
Peter, police are still here at the scene of the attack, and once again, Manitoba's Family Services Minister is trying to explain what happened.
I'm deeply troubled that this has happened to a child in the care of Child and Family Services.
It's not the first time she's expressed shock, outrage, or even shed tears.
We have a responsibility to protect children.
Manitoba's Family Services Minister is under fire as yet another young teenager in her care has become the victim of a brutal attack after being placed in a hotel.
Hotels have always been the placement of last resort. And as our shelter beds are filling with the volume of children, but also the large number of kids that have come in, and also sometimes there are placement breakdowns in the middle of the night.
Police found the teenage girl in critical condition in the early morning in this parkade. She had been placed in this hotel. How or why she left is unclear. It's a sad reminder of the Tina Fontaine case. Another teen, also in CFS care, staying in that same hotel, who left, went missing, and was found dead in Winnipeg's Red River.
There are rules about supervision, but
these are child trafficking facilities. They're sex trafficking facilities for the Indian girls. There's people that are waiting to prey on them. If you turn on them, if they think you're going to tell on them, they're going to beat you into a coma, like what happened to the girl they're talking about here. They're also talking about another girl at the same hotel being found dead by the river. Child sex trafficking, preying on Indians, Aboriginal Canada.
When it's sometimes when it's a child and they choose to leave, there are recommendations that workers are not allowed to physically restrain them. So that's part of the challenge that we have right now.
These will be...
Last fall, while announcing changes to the foster care system, Irvin Ross said hotels would be eliminated. Through the winter, kids were still being checked in. 9 are in hotels right now, down from 20 last month. The watchdog for the system says that's unacceptable.
We've got to change. We've got to do something different. But we've all known that hotels is the last place a child should be.
As police investigate, Irvin Ross says the province is recruiting foster parents and finding space in group homes and shelters.
We can ensure that June 1st, that there are no children in hotels. And I'm confident that we can do that.
Now, as for that teenage girl, Peter, her name can't be released. While police are saying she's in critical condition, it's also worth noting that the homicide unit is involved in this investigation.
All right, Cameron, thank you.
If you ever imagined that today could ever happen, and like, what are you thinking right now? What answers do you want?
Like I just want to know why these people take my baby and is the reason, what is the reason of the people take my baby, and I want, como se dice, justicia.
Justice.
Justice.
Did they say why they did? Did they give you a reason?
Okay, you're witnessing a mother who they stole her baby and murdered the baby, and now she's talking about it. She's ready to speak. Have they told her how the child died?
No.
They have not told her. These are child sex trafficking pedophile rings running out of Canada. War crimes against the Aboriginals. It's been going on for decades. This mother lost her baby to these perverts. So we're very glad that the CFS building in Manitoba has burnt to the ground and can no longer traffic and torture children.
And
They don't have any reasons about this.
Has anybody talked to you about how the death occurred, like how it happened? Was it in a...
This is a 1-month-old. She hasn't been told anything about her baby that was kidnapped and murdered.
car, the car seat? Have you been told anything?
I actually I can answer that. I told the media about the baby was in, like, a driver took the baby from point A to point B. He drove 48 minutes. We don't know what happened in that time. The police just told me that they cannot say anything about this case, and I don't really want to hold my sister more. And you want to go into?
One thing that the police did tell us that no charges will be laid. We don't know why. Is that then more questions, that the fact that there's no charges at all, or?
The thing we just have to wait, and then we can.
So
again, you just witnessed a 1-month-old. The mother speak. They won't tell her anything. It appears the baby was murdered very rapidly in their system, CFS, and they won't tell them anything. Preying on the Aboriginal Indians, been doing it for decades. Again, I want to make sure everyone knows what we're covering here today. We're covering the burning down of the CFS building, Manitoba, Canada, burns to the ground. Very excited that this facility can no longer kidnap, torture, rape, murder, drug children for profit. Thank you for watching it. We've got a lot more information. Again, we're covering Canada, war crimes against children, babies, mothers, parents, torture, being separated. As you can see, there's a Christmas tree here. The irony. This is actually a very beautiful sight. These facilities have hurt, maimed, tortured. You just seen 3 murders. One girl beaten critical. Another murdered by the river, placed in hotels. You just witnessed a mother who lost her 1-month-old baby to these pervert creeps. So this facility can no longer do that. I mean, can we see God in here? I mean, let's look for God. This is a Christmas. The irony here. We're just going to keep going with some more video. Stand by. We've got a lot of good information here.
What you were saying?
So I was saying that we have to wait. Like, we don't know how was the cause of the baby. We just have the case of the death of the baby. That we just have to wait, and then. Well, there is a medical examiner that talked to us the next Monday after Matthias passed away. She told us that Matthias was in a good condition. He was a healthy baby, and they don't know why he died. We just know my brother, he was at the CFS office when the driver was with the baby. They left. He saw when the driver put a blanket on the baby. We don't want to point fingers. We just want to know if the driver removed the blanket from the baby's face when he put the baby on the back seat. We don't know that. Bill, one of the police officers, they told me that they asked these questions to the driver. The driver said that it's supposed to he remove the blanket from the baby's seat, like from the baby's body when the baby was like in the back seat. But that's everything we know. And actually, the driver, when I was at the hospital, the driver told me, because I was like, I couldn't believe that it was happening to us, and he said, I don't know what happened. I just drove for like 38 minutes, and when I noticed, the baby was blue.
Yeah, the baby was blue. You know, just who knows what happened. Clearly kidnapped and trafficked from a loving mother. They're not giving her any answers. We'll just go over what she has to say one more time.
To know why these people take my baby, and what is the reason, you know? What is the reason of the people take my baby, and
She doesn't even have a reason why they took her baby.
I want, how se dice justicia?
Justice.
Justice.
Did they say why they did? Did they give you a reason?
No,
And
they don't have any
No reason why they took the 1-month-old baby from this loving mother.
reasons about this.
has anybody talked to you about how the death occurred? Like how it happened? Was it in the car seat? Have you been told anything?
I actually I can answer that. I told the media about the baby was in, like, a driver took the baby from point A to point B. He drove 38 minutes. We don't know what happened in that time. The police just told me that they cannot say anything about this.
Okay, the driving of a 1-month-old for 48 minutes and the baby's stone cold blue and dead by the time this person arrives to wherever he was going, the CPS child trafficker.
Case, and I don't really want to hold my sister more. You want to go into?
One thing that the police did tell us that no charges will be laid. We don't know why. Is that more questions?
You know, just a completely healthy 1-month-old baby murdered by CFS Manitoba. That's what we're covering right now. Again, we're also covering the fact that the main central child trafficking facility has burnt to the ground. It can no longer torture children, kidnap, traffic, alienate, drug. Hundreds of and thousands of Native American aboriginals out of Manitoba, Canada. They've been doing this for decades, and we're showing you multiple murders coming out of this same area, Manitoba. Let's get back to some more video. Let's see.
Yeah. It's called survival sex. Homeless women on the sex trade that stand on street corners in Canada. Many are Aboriginal women from far-off places. Caught in a cycle of poverty and substance abuse, prostitution provides enough to feed a drug habit, but barely enough for subsistence.
When I'm driving, I'm looking for pretty much women that are on the streets, just walking, or either just standing in one area.
Milton is part of the Ottawa-based Minwashan Aboriginal Support Centre. It focuses on Aboriginal women who dominate street-level sex trade in cities in Canada. The outreach workers offer the women food, clothing, and other essentials.
I got nice, wicked boots already. Yeah.
Lucy is a 24-year-old Inuit woman from Canada's far north. She's lived here for more than a century leading up to the 1990s. 150,000 Aboriginal children were placed in residential schools. Separated from their families, these schools primarily focused on assimilation. These children suffered greatly from both physical and sexual abuse. Another 30,000 children were forcibly put up for adoption in the 1960s in non-native homes.
We have no self-esteem whatsoever. We're full of anger. You know, we grow up holding back and not saying anything because these are foster parents and these are people that are supposed to care for us, and they abuse us. So we grow up full of anger and rage and turn to drugs and turn to the streets. I mean, turning to the streets is a lot less painful than living in a residential school and whatnot.
I don't think that there are any Aboriginal any First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in Canada that aren't impacted by that. So when we look at the women who are on the streets, it's impossible to separate their current experience from their historical context of their lives.
And you brought up a really important point that we at WAM have been fighting against for several years. We know that CFS has become a huge issue. 90% of children in care are First Nations. There's profit to be made off of the system. We have to remember that only 11.1% of the entire population of Manitoba is First Nations, yet 90% of the children in care are First Nations. And that is obviously a huge issue. That's not just a coincidence. There's a reason for that. Now, what would you do if elected at the legislative building? What would you do in order to call the powers of CFS and this kind of profit-making system that's bordered around the whole CFS system?
I would be calling out CFS in the ledge, and bringing to light the problems with giving so much money per child. I mean, when you look at it, one of the First Nations people I was talking with, they said, well, you know, Child and Family Services receives $68,000 per child. So their budget depends on having a lot of children in care. So what they're doing is they're stealing children for money, basically, and coming up with all sorts of excuses for taking these children from these homes. And then they keep these children away from their culture, away from their families, and it just becomes a vicious cycle for them. And with them, you know, basically stealing the children and making money off these children, they send them out to homes. Some of these people, yes, they're good caring foster parents, but other ones, they see that as a money-making area for them because they receive $2,000 some odd $100 per child. So if they have 4 children, they're receiving $8,000 a month to take care of these children, and the children may receive $150 out of that for personal use, but the rest is given to the families that are fostering them.
And it's so sad to look at this system. I want to give out a few stats here because there are 11,000 children in care, and that's a conservative estimate that came out a few years ago. Out of that, about 60% of children that become adults through the CFS system end up homeless. That's a huge statistic. About 75 to 80% of those missing and murdered came through the CFS system. If we want to talk about what some of the root causes are for many of the problems we see, it doesn't end at CFS, but it's largely within the CFS system and what it does to children and how it destroys development. It's so sad to watch because I know we're a laughingstock for a lot of people outside of Manitoba, and it's a $500 million a year industry in Manitoba, and that should be shameful. That's totally shameful, and people should really be looking at those facts and doing something. You don't have to be personally affected by CFS, but you should really stand up and say something about this because we can't just allow our children to be taken and put into the government system like they are government property. It's just so wrong.
Okay. This building did burn down. We're going to go straight to it again. I'll give you a picture here. The child trafficking facility in Canada, Manitoba, epicenter of child trafficking, kidnapping, alienation, torture of children and babies and families beyond comprehension. $500 million industry, 11,000 children in CPS torture facilities, and they're receiving just 11,000 in CPS care, and they're making 500 million off them. $500 million to traffic and torture and kill. And we're just going over a lot of the infants that die, the teenagers that die, the housing of them in hotels, being beat to a coma, coming up missing by the river, dead from the same hotel. You know, this is business as usual. Too much money involved. Child trafficking. No one cares. It's an industry, and we're going to call it all out. Calling out Canada. We also have a group called CPS News Network Canada. So make sure you go there. We're going to try to put that link in here. See if we have any questions coming in. We feel this place burnt down yesterday. Yeah, it's just an organized. They all replicate each other. Kim, Marie, Kirchfolder, they're doing the same thing in all the countries. It's very strategic to do it the same way. it's just similar to the chemtrail spraying. It's, you know, they do it the same way. They have to do it all over the place in other countries to it's just, you know, these acts are being funded by the most powerful people in the world. Yeah, Angela Ray, we're very excited. Kim lets us know Angela Ray released Friday from the UK, being kidnapped from a restaurant for posting a picture of her and her son on Facebook. That's Angela Ray out of the UK, fighting for 5 years for her son, being alienated when her son's not in a safe place, and there's documentation of that. Again, we're going to try to chop this down here. It's a little slow here. I want to get back to here. And again, we're covering cases coming out of Manitoba. They've been preying on the Indians for decades, and it's just really horrendous, the crimes, the war crimes that we see done there. We have somebody here.
It's Canada's secret.
In here that he killed 50 girls in Canada, and you know they're all Aboriginals, and we're going to show you him. And they were tortured. These girls were tortured, and this is a whole documentary. Let's see if we can just go straight to that heinous case. Responsible for 50 murders. He fed them to the pigs. They claim that the DNA from the fingernail of one of the victims identified her as a murder victim. See what this
Jane, an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Indigenous women face a murder rate 6 times the national average. Every time you come out to this river, do you wonder if you'll recover her body?
You come across remains and you don't know if they're human or not, or if they're your sister.
The UN has censured Canada for its ongoing failure to address the crisis.
The march is to send a message to the men who prey on them that they're being watched by the community.
We see what's going on, and we don't believe that our people deserve it.
These guys do not discriminate. They go after anybody and everybody.
Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is taking action.
Those touched by this national tragedy have waited long enough.
But after years of failure on the part of the police and the government, many here question if it could possibly go far enough to bring justice for the families and keep women safe.
It flashed through my mind that it could be a body that we were trying to pull up. Women have gone missing or been murdered here than anywhere else in the country.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, says nearly 1,200 Indigenous women have gone missing or been murdered across Canada since 1980. But advocacy groups put the figure far higher, at about 4,000 women. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's predecessor, Stephen Harper, largely dismissed the issue. Then, in 2015, Trudeau announced the creation of a 2-year national inquiry to examine the epidemic as part of what he called a total renewal of Canada's relationship with its Indigenous people. But the inquiry has been plagued by delays, resignations, and allegations of government interference. Many here feel it may be destined to fail. Bernadette Smith's younger sister, Claudette Osborne Tayo, has been missing since 2008. Bernadette started Drag the Red in 2014 to support other families looking for answers after the bodies of several women were found in the Red River. The group uses homemade dragging bars with built-in hooks to search the bottom of the river. They hand over what they find to police and a team of forensic anthropologists.
Every time we go out, we offer tobacco to give thanks for, being able to be out here and do this work, but also to offer prayers to, the families that are missing someone, that don't have answers, or who have been murdered and nobody's been brought to justice.
Why this spot in particular?
So this was the Alexander Docks. So there was 2 young girls that were found here.
In August 2014, the body of a 15-year-old Indigenous girl named Tina Fontaine was found in this river wrapped in plastic. Tina's death was a turning point that opened up a lot of people's eyes.
Okay, let's get that straight. That looks like the one from the hotel. That's the same picture of her being found by the river, though being a foster kid being put in a hotel, a Best Western.
Tina's death was a turning point that opened up a lot of people's eyes to this epidemic and sent shockwaves across the country. For many, it highlighted the failures of the system. In the hours before her death, she encountered the police, hospital staff, and child welfare workers.
Tell me about your sister and how she went missing. I know she was only 21 at the time, 10 years ago.
She'd been sexually abused when she was 12 and started running away from home. And she ended up with a much older man and was exploited and was pushed onto the streets. Claudette wasn't someone who didn't stay in contact with someone daily. Nobody had heard from her in 2 days. So my sister Tina went and she filed a missing persons report, and the police basically said, you know, oh, she's out there somewhere, just give it a few days. So we kept going back to the police station and saying, like, you know, something's wrong. They didn't take us seriously. They didn't investigate her case for 10 days. But yeah, so there's a prime example. That's what they pulled up. So there's no blood on it, but
Yeah.
we pull up clothing all the time. We've pulled up lots of underwear, women's underwear, and people weight bodies down with cement, right? When they found Tina Fontaine's body, she was weighted down. Yeah.
Here we go.
Oh wow, that's a strong tug. That's a something, yeah, something definitely got caught on here.
Oh!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I have like. So that's a boot?
More cloth, possibly clothing, and a boot.
It looks like there's a what?
Remains inside.
You want me to check for a foot? All right, they're telling me to check for a foot in here.
It's a branch or a rock. Could be bone stuff.
It flashed through my mind that it could be a body that we were trying to pull up, and it made me feel sick to my stomach, thinking that's what you guys are here to do.
Our first year, there were 7 bodies recovered from this river. So every year we've helped, and I don't even know how many.
Your sister went missing 10 years ago. Every time you come out to this river, do you wonder if you'll recover her body?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's a reality. When you come across remains and you don't know if they're human or not, or if they're your sister, like, it's an emotional roller coaster because you just never know.
3 other women in Bernadette's family have gone missing or been murdered. Only one case has been solved.
Should it be the police doing this?
Absolutely, it should be. Policing is an issue in this country. We were on the streets, putting up posters, talking to people, going to different organizations, going to different places we knew Claudette went to. You know, we were basically doing the police job for them, and no family should have to do that.
The Winnipeg police declined to speak with us on camera or give us a statement. Michael Champagne is an activist who organizes weekly anti-violence rallies in Winnipeg's primarily Indigenous North End neighborhood. A new mural dedicated to missing and murdered women has just been painted in this weekly meeting place.
Tonight, though, we have these beautiful images in our community, but it's frustrating that they have to be memorial images.
I wanted to know why it was necessary to hold weekly anti-violence rallies here.
There was a time when in a year, we had over 52 vigils, funerals, hospital room visits, and the same group of people got together, but always centered around the negative things. We need to host weekly anti-violence here to send a message, not only to the community, but to the people that prey on our community. And our message is that we are united.
Michael grew up in the child welfare system here and says that 1 out of 6 children in this neighborhood are currently in the care of the system. 7% of children across Canada are Indigenous, but they make up nearly half of all foster children in the country. The government cites poverty or lack of adequate food or housing as reasons for separating them from their birth families.
What connections do you see between the child welfare system and the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women?
In the child welfare system, often what ends up happening is a devaluing of Indigenous life, especially for Indigenous women and girls. As they age out of care, they turn 18, unequipped with life skills, severed from their biological families or their home communities. They're at risk of homelessness, harmful substance use, sexual exploitation. Part of the reason why we have such difficulties in child welfare today is that many of those children right now are actually children like me of Indian residential school survivors.
From the 1840s to the mid-1990s, some 150,000 Indigenous children were removed from their families and sent to church and government-run Indian residential schools. Their aim was to kill the Indian in the child by assimilating them into dominant Canadian culture. Many children suffered emotional, physical, and sexual abuse while attending these schools.
As we know now, Indian residential schools was a failed experiment that did a lot more harm than it did good. And unfortunately, that history of family separation over so many generations continues to this day with child welfare.
It's 12:30 a.m. here in the North End neighborhood in Winnipeg, and we've joined this midnight medicine walk organized by the community to reach out to women here that are being sexually exploited, to offer them prayers and medicine and let them know that they're being watched after. And also, the march is to send a message to the men who prey on them that they're being watched by the community.
Lauren Chopek is the founder of the walk. She was once a missing Indigenous woman herself. Lauren ran away from home as a teenager and was trafficked on these streets, where she narrowly escaped a serial killer.
How did the idea of the Midnight Medicine Walk come about?
Through my own experiences of being exploited, I wanted to do something to acknowledge those people as who they actually really are and acknowledge their spirits, honor their spirits, instead of just walking past them every day or driving past them every day thinking of them as homeless people or as prostitutes, because that's not who they are.
Tell me about some of the interactions you have with these women that you're reaching out to on the streets and what really sticks with you.
They tear up, these women, because they're finally being recognized, and they might not feel like they deserve that kind of standing ovation that we give them when we stop and we sing for them. Or we offer them as much. They feel like they don't deserve it, but they do. And they're finally being paid attention to.
Is this process really healing for you?
It is really healing for me. Out of all those negative experiences I've had as a young girl being sexually exploited, now people recognize me and they respect me for those things, I guess, but like in a different way, because now I turned it into something beautiful, I guess.
As we turned the corner onto the main boulevard, we were told that no one takes this road at night unless they're looking for sex.
What message are you guys sending to the men out there who prey on these vulnerable women?
That we see what's going on and that we don't believe that our people deserve it. I want them to see the community coming together.
Because the police's response has been insufficient, Indigenous activists have been stepping up in various ways to ensure the safety of their community members and streets.
Okay, so 2 groups of 7. Yeah. We've got 14, right?
James Favel is the executive director of the Bear Clan Patrol, a community safety patrol that operates in some of Winnipeg's toughest neighborhoods 5 to 6 nights a week.
When we talk about the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls here in this country, do you see your work as trying to put an end to that in a small way?
That's exactly why I started. And the way what happened with Tina Fontaine, I just wasn't prepared to sit around and watch anymore. I had to do something so that I could at least sleep at night and my conscience be clear. And so We started out with 12 volunteers in 2014, and now we have 1,200.
How does that make you feel?
Pretty good.
Tell me a little bit more about the sexual exploitation you see on these streets.
Well, I mean, it's the prostitution here. It was pervasive for a very long time, and there was nobody doing anything about it. It was permitted in this area, you know. And for us in here in this community, that's not suitable, right? We have the exploited women, you know, standing up against buddy's fence, you know, and the kids are playing in the yard, and we've got Johns coming. And these guys do not discriminate. They go after anybody and everybody. They don't care if you're 10 years old or if you're 40 years old.
Why hasn't the state or the city done more to crack down on these Johns?
The political will is not there.
Oh, okay, huge amounts of money involved. Again, we're covering the burning down of CPS headquarters. Manitoba, Canada is no more. The Christmas tree still standing, as beautiful as it could be, while the building can no longer traffic children. This is Manitoba. We've been covering Manitoba this evening. We had a lot of good videos. I need you to share this content. We have more videos. There's one here. Here, this is a famous case where they took a baby from a mother. We'll just go straight to that.
Yeah, I tried calling, but I didn't have your number. Don't make it better for you. You deserve much better. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
This was January 2019.
Oh no, I will. I promise. I promise. I wouldn't. I have no
She
doubt.
supposedly had an alcohol issue in the past,
I understand.
the mother, and they arranged someone to take care of the infant, and instead CPS takes it with them, with law enforcement for child trafficking.
Was that you? Roberta?
My name?
Casadema?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's not me. Like that's not my name. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Okay, this is the Winnipeg Police now, everybody. All you child welfare advocates, I need help. We have the Winnipeg Police showed up now with a CFS worker here that was accusing of, this is the CFS worker that says she was drunk. And he won't give any information about where he got this information from.
This has all been explained to you though, right?
Okay.
What's going on?
Nothing. Nothing. There's no grounds. They haven't explained no grounds at all.
This is unfortunate. I understand that. Because nobody wants to deal with this, right? But Child and Family Services has the power here to apprehend the baby. Okay.
We need to tell you,
It's Child and Family Services.
can I explain first?
Sure.
Our people, where we come from, the Island Lake CFS agencies is taking over. And if you can wait for them, because we need our own people to look after this issue.
Hey guys, we're not going to discuss this any further. Child and Family Services has the power to apprehend the child. Okay, we're going to act. We're going to actually
Kidnap the child.
Physically remove the baby.
I'm going to pray for you.
I don't
You
want
know
to do that. Okay.
Both of you. Do you feel good? Do you feel good doing this?
Okay. Okay, so are you gonna comply? If not, we're gonna have to physically remove the baby. I don't wanna do that.
Oh my God.
And then you gotta work on the steps to get the baby back. Getting the child back.
We will comply. I
Okay.
don't wanna see police have to take baby.
I know, and I don't wanna do that. That's why I'm asking mom
Yeah,
to
no,
cooperate
we
with
will.
us.
Can we just have like 5-15
No,
minutes?
no, sorry.
There's no time to say
No,
goodbye.
it has to be right now.
I'd appreciate a few minutes just to talk with my people to get.
No, we're not extending this any longer.
I can tell. I can tell. Are you a father? I can tell you hate this.
This has been going on too
Can
long.
she put
It
baby
hasn't. How long are you saying too long? Too long? What do you mean too long?
Oh, I totally.
What is with your lives?
Now you gotta work on the steps to get your child back. Okay?
We're not trying to be here to be here, it's just, we gotta, they have to do their job, we have to do our job. We're gonna get the car seat in here, you can place the baby in the car seat yourself.
I think they're gonna, you have the car seat or you
Yeah,
gonna let the
he's
baby
done,
over?
he's done.
It's gonna get it? Okay.
Is there a reason why baby can't go with family?
Zero pugnets. No, staying. I don't know.
You don't let go of that baby. You don't let go of that baby. You don't let go of that baby. You don't let go of that baby.
When's the earliest visit? So you have no pre-planning set for after the apprehension? But you have no pre-planning for bonding afterwards? All of this will be discussed later, right, after the apprehension. Well, if the baby is already apprehended, this is just going to place. But just to be clear, there's zero plan to discuss with mom.
Planning was discussed with mom yesterday.
And where's the visitation? You just need to go now. You need to put baby in the car seat.
It's not gonna.
No, that's
We'll-
fine.
We'll try to get that
That's fine.
info. We're gonna get that info at some point. But This has to happen now, I'm not sure.
Hopefully tomorrow.
They're not like,
We're gonna call tomorrow. I'd rather not wait till Monday.
yeah, it's not tomorrow, it's only Friday.
Oh, good, jeez.
You can just, get the blankets in on the board.
Okay, there it is there. Law enforcement kidnapping a baby by gunpoint. All law enforcement around the world are responsible for this. You better hold them all accountable. There's no gray area here. They all know about this stuff happening, and they're all silent because they don't care and they're complicit. All they care about is their check. They actually get off on torture and power tripping on people. You just witnessed a newborn being ripped from a mother. No reason for it whatsoever. The baby has been given back. We understand this happened in January of 19. But it's very important that we film everything, we document everything, film these people. Public outcry, public pressure of this video that did go viral likely contributed to the mother getting her baby back. If there's nobody there, nobody watching, nobody protesting, nobody posting, nobody sharing, this stuff gets, these children are never seen again. They're trafficked to the black market adoptions for all sorts of sick things, money and perversion. Again, we must hold all law enforcement accountable for war crimes. There's no gray area, like some are good and some are bad. They're all in on this, okay? They all take children, put them in a system where you're not going to get due process constitutional rights. That is nothing but a child trafficking, a pedophile ring known as CPS, CFS, DCFS, Child Protective Service. So we've seen that. Very happy to hear that she did get her baby returned. We did cover another case of the 1 month old. The 1 month old. We'll go back to that. Who could not forget a 1 month old? That's not it. Stand by. This is it.
Did you ever imagine?
Okay, they take a 1 month old baby from a mother, don't tell her why, traffic the child, drive with the 1 month old baby for less than an hour, and the baby's dead in a car seat, stone cold blue. We know what happened. It identified as a healthy baby. It's strangulation or oxygen. Sometimes the babies cry. They try to shut them up. Sometimes they put something over their head so they don't have to hear them crying, and it kills them, and they're not paying attention. They're on drugs, all sorts of things. This is what happens when 1 month old are not with their mother.
Today ever happen? And like, what are you thinking right now? What answers do you want?
Like I just want to know why these people take my baby and what is the reason, you know? What is the reason of the people take my baby and I want justice.
Did they say why they did? Did they give you a reason?
No.
And
they don't have any reasons about this.
Has anybody talked to you about how the death occurred, like how it happened? Was it in the car seat? Have you been told anything?
I actually can answer that. I told the media about the baby was in, like a driver took the baby from point A to point B. He drove 38 minutes. We don't know what happened in that time. The police just told me that they cannot say anything about this case, and I don't really want to hold my sister more. And you want to go into?
One thing that the police did tell us that no charges will be laid. We don't know why. Is that more questions that the fact that there's no charges at all, or?
The thing is, we just have to wait, and then we can.
Sorry, you were saying?
So I was saying that we have to wait. Like we don't know how was the cause of the baby. We just have the case of the death, the baby. We just have to wait, and then.
Well, there is a medical examiner that talked to us the next Monday after Matias passed away. She told us that Matias was in a good condition. He was a healthy baby, and they don't know why he died. We just know my brother, he was at the CFS office when the driver was with the baby. They left. He saw when the driver put a blanket on the baby. We don't want to point fingers. We just want to know if the driver removed the blanket from the baby's face when he put the baby on the back seat We don't know that. Bill, one of the police officers, they told me that they asked these questions to the driver. The driver said that it's supposed to he remove the blanket from the baby's seat, like from the baby's body when the baby was like in the back seat. But that's everything we know. And actually, the driver, when I was at the hospital, the driver told me because I was like I couldn't believe that it was happening to us, and he said, I don't know what happened. I just drove for like 38 minutes, and when I noticed, the baby was blue.
Yeah, 30 minutes and the baby's blue. Yeah, for no reason, from healthy to blue, from 30 to 50-minute drive. Clearly wasn't cared for properly. Probably put some type of heavy blanket over the child's head, where maybe just couldn't get fresh air, breathing carbon monoxide, dioxide, whatever it is that we exhale. Just a senseless murder of a 1-month-old. No information given to the mother. Cause of death, reason for taking the baby. Again, we're covering the Manitoba burn down of the child trafficking facility in Manitoba, Canada. So this is a Sandy Bay. We're very excited that this place can no longer kidnap and traffic, torture children. So that was just if prayers could be answered, this could be one of them. Prayers to stop child trafficking, to shut down these facilities. So it appears that this is we'll call it an act of God, because it's just a blessing anytime you can slow these people down from kidnapping and trafficking children from the Indians. Making up over 50% of the kids in foster care, only 7% of the population, and usually taken for poverty reasons when they have no problem giving a child trafficker $2,000 a month. That's what we're hearing coming out of Canada, $2,000 a month per child to traffic. So that's a very high number, about over double what they give in the United States. So they're in desperate need for child traffickers in Canada. Let's see here. Trying to close this down. We'll play one more video again about the status of Canada and what they're doing, and that it's no different than here in the US. Computer's a little slow. Let's just see if we can jump down here to the screen. And here.
And you brought up a really important point that we at WAM have been fighting against for several years. We know that CFS has become a huge issue. 90% of children in care are First Nations. There's profit to be made off of the system. We have to remember that only 11.1% of the entire population of Manitoba is First Nations, yet 90% of the children in care are First Nations. And that is obviously a huge issue. That's not just a coincidence. There's a reason for that. Now, what would...
Okay. Manitoba. Now, let's get back. He just said 90% of kids in foster care are Indian descent, and they're in Manitoba when they only represent 11% of the population. So, let's just praise God that this place is closed down and can no longer traffic children.
What would you do if elected at the legislative building? What would you do in order to call the powers of CFS and this kind of profit-making system that's bordered around the whole CFS system?
I would be calling out CFS in the ledge, and bringing to light the problems with giving so much money per child. I mean, when you look at it, one of the First Nations people I was talking with, they said, well, Child and Family Services receives $68,000 per child. So their budget depends on having a lot of children in care. So what they're doing is they're stealing children for money, basically, and coming up with all sorts of excuses for taking these children from these homes. And then they keep these children away from their culture, away from their families, and it just becomes a vicious cycle for them. And with them, basically stealing the children and making money off these children, they send them out to homes, Some of these people, yes, they're good caring foster parents, but other ones, they see that as a money-making area for them because they receive $2,000 some odd $100 per child. So if they have 4 children, they're receiving $8,000 a month to take care of these children, and the children may receive $150 out of that for personal use, but the rest is given to the families that are fostering them.
And it's so sad to look at this system. I want to give out a few stats here because there are 11,000 children in care, and that's a conservative estimate that came out a few years ago. Out of that, about 60% of children that become adults through the CFS system end up homeless. That's a huge statistic. About 75 to 80% of those missing and murdered came through the CFS system. If we want to talk about what some of the root causes are for many of the problems we see, it doesn't end at CFS, but it's largely within the CFS system and what it does to children and how it destroys development. It's so sad to watch because I know we're a laughingstock for a lot of people outside of Manitoba, and it's a $500 million a year industry in Manitoba, and that should be shameful. That's totally shameful, and people should really be looking at those facts and doing something. You don't have to be personally affected by CFS, but you should really stand up and say something about this because we can't just allow our children to be taken and put into the government system like they are government property. It's just so wrong.
So wrong. You heard it right there. My God. Just out of control. No one can stop it. Only the people can stop it. So that's what we're trying to do here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. Again, we covered the Manitoba, Canada, CPS torture facility, trafficking headquarters burns to the ground. Merry Christmas. It's this is an act of God. When God strikes, this is what it looks like. He knows right where to go. It goes to the heart of the battle, and that's what we do here at the CPS News Network. We go to the heart of the battle. We don't want to play around in other places. We go straight to where the core, the most pain, the most suffering of innocent children and parents and family, where it's all happening, and the money train. That's the only way this system can function. Let's see. This is the website, sandybaycfs.org. Their headquarters. They don't show a picture of their headquarters here. Let's see if we can get a picture of their headquarters here. Just, they give the disguise, keep families together. You just heard 90% of children in foster care are Indians in Manitoba. 90%, and they're only 11% of the population. And just it's like the epicenter. I think we should thank the Lord tonight that something, an act of God has happened here and stopped this facility from torturing and trafficking, murdering, drugging more children. We'll go back to a picture of that. We'll just sign out with a picture there. That's it on fire. But every single one of these facilities across the United States must be shut down. The government must shut them down. The people's outcry must shut them down. We don't promote violence or anything like that, but call me a conspiracy theorist, but this is an act of God. My God, it was such a hot spot of heinous scale and volume, torture, kidnapping, trafficking of children. This was the heart epicenter. You heard it from that man. 90% of children trafficked through this facility are Indians, and they're only 11% of the population. Wow. Thank you for watching, everyone. CPS News Network. Make sure to share this. We are moving in. Operation 2020. Hindsight, we can see clearly now. No more smoke and mirrors. No more double talk. The people need to rise up and stop this together. No different than with the vaccine assaults that they're attacking children with, and they're attacking everybody with these vaccines, and that all has to stop as well. Thank you for watching, everyone. CPS News Network signing out.